Hey, hey, welcome everybody. I am Farrington, one of the programmers here with Out on Film, and I have just the amazing opportunity to host this great talk back after watching this splendid film titled T. Lane Stanley and Mel Glickman are here joining us today for after talk back special. T is a amazing feature film following just a transitional year and period for our amazing main character M. I want to thank you so much, Lane, for kind of telling this story, creating this story, and I also want to give you an extra congratulations for being one of our Filmmaker Recipient Award winners for this year. So again, thank you so much for joining me, and yeah, thanks again for making this film. More importantly.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here, and thanks to you all for the support throughout the process.
No, yeah, it's always a blessing to see some alumni. I know you're very seasoned, obviously. So he's a very seasoned writer, very seasoned filmmaker. It's great to see, we just had Boyfriends screening at the Out on Film, I think it was 2023. Um, so it's amazing to have you back with a feature film with us titled T. So T follows like a real life transitional conversation and story. Can you talk just a little bit about shaping this story and just kind of how the making came about and even the pre-production kind of stages of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So often when we're seeing trans stories, transition is kind of reduced to like a hair and makeup change, or a costume change. And I think we all know too, sometimes often that's on a cis actor and their performance of the gender that they were not assigned at birth ends up being a real focal point for the story and kind of the be all end all of what the performance of the story is. And so we were really interested in finding a way that we could bring like the kind of much messier, slower reality of what transition looks like for a lot of us to the screen. So Mel, who looks a little frozen, but hopefully will be back. But Mel and I had been working together for a long time since back when we were both living in Baltimore, and they actually approached me because they were considering starting T, and they just like sent me a text out of the blue and was like, "Hey, has anybody ever like made a movie incrementally while somebody was actually starting testosterone therapy?" Um, and I was like, why do you ask? And so the conversations really kind of evolved from there. And so it was this interesting phenomenon where I had been on T for a few years at that point, and Mel hadn't started it yet, right? So the initial screenplay I wrote, and they, along with our producer, Lowell Blink, gave notes on every draft and really were involved in shaping the story. But it was kind of what I guessed their experience might look like based on what mine had been. And then we adjusted as we went along throughout the shooting process, which spanned about 2 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. 2 years is a time to shoot as well as take critique. And I know Mel is coming in and out here with us. But I wanted to ask, yeah, in the shape of like 2 years, can you talk just a little bit about how maybe that transitional conversation was like kind of affected, kind of changed? I know I think there was like an intentional kind of sequence that I'm sure you started with, and kind of as it kind of progressed, I know things obviously in a filmmaking, any kind of indie scenes kind of shifts. So talk about just like keeping the track and staying the course over 2 years, and what kind of hiccups and challenges you might have seen there. And then hopefully Mel will come in and I'll definitely repatch that question to them because I'm sure they have some stuff to add to that too.
For sure. Yeah, we had a full screenplay. I think I just my like writer brain, like I can't deal with like gaps or like vagueness. Like some people are so improvisational and like coming to set with more of an outline or whatever, and I'm like not one of those filmmakers. And so we had a full script with the knowledge that it might change. But the emotional arcs and the relationship arcs, we knew wouldn't change, right? Like that was the part that was really fictionalized. That wasn't blending any documentary. We weren't changing the M Spencer relationship based on Mel's real life relationship, right? Like that doesn't make sense. So it was really the physical changes that we were noting that were baked into the script in certain ways that we were reevaluating those. And if there were opportunities to strengthen scenes that we were going to be shooting soon now that we had our full cast, right? Like, did we want to rewrite anything based on the folks that we had brought? brought into the story. Did had we just grown as writers and performers, and wanted to play with something new. So there was some revision, but most of the changes were around the specifics of the physical changes.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And Mel, I'm going to feed you this question as well.
Yes.
I basically asked, this was a film that was shot over the past 2 years, right? I'm asking specifically what kind of surprises, what kind of challenges, what kind of things did you face over the past or over the course of 2 years into getting into your character, becoming M, seeing what they're about, and also incorporating kind of your own actual, lived in experience as well with that character.
Oh, excellent question. I mean, just to first of all, to reiterate something Lane just said, being able to come back to production after, a month, 2 months, 11 months after growing as a person and as a performer, you start to have conversations about upcoming scenes that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to have, right? We can go either in depth or look at it from a slightly different angle. Um, I mean, from my perspective, there was a couple of things going on, right? I was physical transition was actually, changing me, both my body and my internal perspective on myself and my external perspective on, like society and how society was like slowly changing the way it reacted to me. Um, so being able to take those new experiences and then like reinterpret them through M's eyes, like through their experience, like depending on what I had gone through or what hadn't happened to me physically yet, um, was always like sort of a delight and surprise to see how like that affected my read of a scene that, last time Lane and I had read it together was 6 months prior. Um, yeah, that was the biggest thing.
No, thank you. I think that incorporates it. Lane is talking about, just having the script, having this like kind of like concrete conversation, concrete storyline here. And yeah, there's just a lot of real intimate and personal elements, that are being kind of bled throughout this character. So I do completely see that. And Lane, you also talked about something here as well. And this is also a question also for you as well, Mel, but you talked about the importance of like telling this story from like a first person trans perspective, rather than leaving that to like cis people. As some of these stories have been in the past. Can you talk just a little bit about why this is like kind of an important factor and a driving point of this film?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much sensationalism out there right now. And obviously the political climate has only gotten worse since we started and even since we finished the film. And there's so many like scarecrow arguments about what trans people are. There's also just like, I feel like this was a really big fad, especially like when we started the movie, but of just like shocking before and after photos of like, can you believe this person was, and this hyper fixation on like our bodies uh and the radical changes they go through. And so it was really important to us, it's just like everything is always more complicated than it is in a movie or in the news media. Um, but really, really for me, it was an important goal, like to situate gender transition is a specific type of authenticity journey, but it is not the only type of authenticity journey that humans go through. And so that's why we also have like these other kind of these side characters who are going through their own journeys in various ways, because there's a way of just kind of like uh, not normalizing, because I'm not like the biggest fan of normalization politics, but of just kind of situating like um, it is this unique experience, and it is not this like fundamentally other type of human experience. It's just its own subset. And then we also wanted to make a lot of space for what non-binary medical transition can look like, and space for trans characters who are unsure, right, or don't necessarily like love every aspect of their transition, because that's so much of what we've seen, right, is like in order to make it into like This is certainly changing, but like 5 years ago, any trans memoir just started of like, I was a child, I played with the trucks and I wanted to play with the boys and I hated my life. And then I transitioned and now I'm like good forever, no problems ever again, and everything's solved. And that was kind of the narrative we had to sell in order to get anyone to care, and now I think it's like a lot of trans people, certainly for me, it was very like, I don't know if I want to start this thing. And my trans friends are saying you don't know unless you try. And I'm like, well, what does that even mean? And like a lot of us uh don't go in with like, I have this singular vision of who I am and I will fight for it at any cost. There's a lot of different types of stories other than that story that's mostly been covered. So nuance, gray area, uncertainty, and just like being a person, right? And not like there's a person under the gender or alongside the gender or whatever, that often gets erased when we're in those sensationalist narratives.
Yeah, it's interesting, like right, wrong, or different because of the way marketing film, marketing art works. Like our elevator pitch, like the first thing people learn about this movie when they first hear about us is like sort of a sensational
Mhm.
grab, right?
Mm.
It's like, oh, watch this person dramatically change, over the course of this movie in real time, da da da. And then when you actually see it, you get the real
Mm.
perspective, which is more nuanced, which is like, okay, for this particular person, the changes aren't as dramatic as you would think they are. That aligns with the experience of a lot of other trans people. And like, it's not, at the end of the day, it's not a movie about, watch how hairy this person gets. It's a movie about like the everyday struggles and interpersonal relationships of, like just one person. Um, Farrington, the only other thing that I'll add to what Lane just said is, when I was first coming up with the idea of this film and first pitched it to Lane, it was coming from a place of, as an artist, will I have like will I have space and will I be welcome to do the things that I want to do professionally if I make this change in my life? Like,
Mhm. Wow.
obviously, as like a cisgender looking person, there is plenty of room as a performer, and as a trans person, um, there's slightly less room at the moment. But there is a solidity to like the idea of like being at the end of your transition. Like everything is wrapped up, my body has changed as much as it's going to change. That's it. I can like go and market myself looking like this now. And like I talked to a lot of my trans friends when I was thinking about, going on T, and I just, got stories of like, oh, I delayed going on T so long because I didn't want it to affect my singing voice and I didn't want to have to put my career on hold, or, like my agent recommended to me that I step to the side for like 3 or 4 years, and then, once you're more settled in your transition, like you can come back and I'll reintroduce you to all of the casting directors again as sort of a different person. And that just didn't feel like the right answer to me. I felt like well, surely we can make room for people who are, in physical process, like in the same way that we make room, or not in the same way, but in a similar way to, how we make room for, people going through pregnancy. Like they don't have to put their careers on hold just because they're going through a physical change, just the way that they handle, their schedule or their characterization or whatever, has to shift. Um, yeah. And so, when I was pitching this to Lane, I was thinking like, well, we can make room for people in transition.
No, I thank you. Absolutely. I thank you for one being that that real, just about, I think, kind of seeing kind of, you're right, like what box kind of the media and Hollywood will put you in, and kind of what this means for the longevity of, your career, your comfortability, your livelihood. You know what I'm saying? We're getting to have a glimpse of that through this film, but in reality, it's still, there's just so much other, different nuances that are being embodied with this project as you're also experiencing. Something I want to ask you, Mel, is just like, how do you hope that trans viewers see themselves through T? And then how might you hope cis viewers take away from this film as well?
Oh man. Um, I mean, regardless of how people identify, I hope that people walk away from this movie feeling um, like a sense of belonging, a sense of being heard, um, a, a, a sense of like, oh, you like it's okay to be not totally sure of where you want to end up, but it's worth making the journey just in case, or just to like to see what I discover about myself. Um, I hope that trans people seeing this movie enjoy, watching a trans character that is, outside of the paradigm of the normal trans character. Or which, let me say this: it's uh, we feel a lot of pressure to put trans characters on display that are faultless, right? That are like angelic, like pinnacles of community, like nothing, like there's nothing that you can point out, at them that could like, like Lane was saying before, fuel the fire of a scarecrow argument. And with M, like M is messy. M makes a lot of questionable decisions, not out of malice, but because they're learning in real time, right? And they're just like they're trying to do their best by the people that they care about. Um, and I mean, I hope cisgender people see that too. That
Absolutely.
we're just as messy as anybody else.
Absolutely. And Lane, I think there's a crafting of this conversation, a crafting of you bridging this kind of need, this need for authentic storytelling. Can you talk just about building a queer cast and crew behind the set? I know trans representation is a big part of this film, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. Can you talk about assembling a team of trans folks, of caring for this story? I know the film as well just kind of touches on a number of sensitive issues and a number of, mental health conversations and topics. And yeah, and just having that kind of space and environment where you can share this amazing story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the other great thing about like putting queer creatives in charge is like that's who we know anyway.
Mhm.
Like when you're a member of a community, then like it's not that hard to find other members of the community. So, but we did, a lot of like asking for referrals, a lot of asking folks to bring their people in who like I wasn't connected with yet. And so we made a lot of new connections in Los Angeles, certainly through folks who like they had come on board the film and they were excited and so they were down to recommend the next person. And yeah, it's this kind of like web of connection of like people who are lifting up each other's stories, and friends of friends who then come be
That's
part.
amazing. Yeah, Lane, your work expands theater, it expands community spaces, it expands shelters and prisons. What did those experiences do to like inform this piece today?
It's a great question. I do feel, I mean, I think that, yeah, so as you mentioned, do a lot of like community embedded work, in like unhoused spaces in prisons. And that comes from, for a long time, I felt a little bifurcated in my art making of like either I'm in 12-step recovery with 9 years sober. And, it felt like for a long time there was either like queer and trans stories that were like super like silly and like a lesbian farce where everybody's running around slamming doors, or there it was about like housing insecurity, recovery, restorative justice, like people are dying, like super dire, and it felt like I was a little like it was one or the other. And the past few years for me has really been about like trying to find more stories that are in the middle of the Venn diagram, which is where I live, right? And so I think bringing in the mental health component of this film was definitely like a big step towards that. Um, but I do prefer like engaging community members, like both artists from specific communities, but also non-artists from those communities, across all of that, because for me, uh, anytime, even though this film is very personal for me and obviously for Mel as well, and there is a lot of my own experience that's put into it, especially like as a survivor of sexual trauma and etc. Um, and anytime you're writing a movie with more than one character, it's also about people who are not you and who don't look like you, and so like finding those people and bringing them into the process. But then also with really personal work, it can be helpful to do like all trans closed group space readings and things like that because it's helpful to me to know like what is common among like many trans people I speak to or trans masculine people I speak to, or you can keep that subset can keep getting smaller, gay trans men that I speak or what what I mean, like but how
Absolutely.
specific you want to get about me, versus like what's like, oh, that's a big thing for me, but like this guy feels totally differently about it, right? And it just kind of it helps me know that I'm like never the only trans person around, my story is not the only trans story, and we're not trying to tell the trans story
Mm.
because that's not one thing, right? And so just getting as specific as possible, having those community spaces where you can see the diversity of, I mean, I have been in rooms of gay trans men who are all like very different, and so even at that level, like there's still all of this difference between us. And so it helps you again treat your character as an individual, because even though we are the trans people who don't want to like just be writing an archetype, we've still grown up on all the same cis media and sensationalism that everyone else has. And so sometimes you can like accidentally write tropes into your characters. So that community process, I think, can help you really specify your narrative.
No, it made the difference. It shows in your writing. It shows in the characters, the character development, the character strengths and weaknesses. It definitely added a lot, I think, to this story. I think when the last question, I think we talked about almost everything I wanted to talk about, but this is a great question for you both. Is talking just about, you vaguely mentioned this film as like a building block for queer cinema and trans cinema specifically, and I definitely echo that. In terms of the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see or where do you want to see trans films and trans representation look like in continuation to these building blocks and to get us to a point where we are more where trans folks are more visible and we are more understanding and more open to these stories as as messy and fun and as real as they can possibly be.
Yeah, I just want more. Like I feel like that's always my solution to everything. It's just like I just like want more of everything because like where my brain kind of immediately goes, it is like I want to see more like trans joy, right? Like we have so many like Boys Don't Cry was the only one for so long, and it's so dire at the end. And so it's just too much. But also like I think that it can be politically wacky to like not have any transphobia in any of our stories because that's not, you know, that's not gonna be reality. And so but I think um, the more that we can have trans stories, different types of trans stories with different intersecting identities, different parts of the US, different parts of the world, right? Like all of these things, different tone, like comedies and tragedies, and like all, like, I just want, um, I am gonna blank now, but somebody was like, trans people in space. Like I want trans people in space. Like that's when I'm
Yeah,
gonna
Lane,
say, like,
can
we're
you write
there.
that for me like
Yeah,
right
no,
now?
right now
I
we're
would write
working
the
on it.
worst space movie of all time. Um, yeah, but it's just like I just want us to have as many different stories and as wildly different experiences as any other group of people has, because that's reality, right? And I've also like had these weird experiences where times there it's happened to me a couple of times that I've like made trans work and some like trans audience member has been really rattled because they've been like that's not my experience. And I'm like, cool, it is my experience, like, but like we're so starved for
Yeah.
representation sometimes. It's like, even when we're trying to lift up each other's work, it's like it's alarming because it's like, oh, but I didn't resonate with it. And it's like, well, that's that's okay. It's okay as long as I'm not telling cis people it's the trans story and it leaves you out, right? Like, um but to me, always it's just more of everything. Put us in space.
Absolutely. Mel?
I mean, agreed with everything that Lane just said, especially putting us in space. Um, I mean, just more that isn't isolationist, more that keeps the conversation going with both trans audiences and cis audiences and questioning audiences. Like, the more that we can get people of all walks of life to see these movies and talk about it in a way that makes their view of the trans community and the queer community more multifaceted and less dangerous or damaging to their previous perspective, the better.
No, I thank you all so much. I am out of time. Thank you so much, Lane. Thank you so much, Mel, for sharing this, for being open, for giving us something new and something refreshing and something real and something authentic. I think this film has been on our minds for a while now, as we had the pleasure of screening and supporting you, Lane, as a filmmaker and a writer and a director. I encourage our audience to make sure that they vote for this film at home. Make sure you share and encourage your other friends to take a look at this film and vote as well. This film is eligible for Audience Awards. And I thank everyone again just for participating. And Lane, I hope to see what's next. And the next trans film that is in space is what I'm hearing. We need them in space now. You can't. I'm
But
expecting.
there's buzz, Lane. You're
Well,
writing
thank
something in
you.
space,
We're
really?
getting pressed now for it. So thank you all both again. I cannot be more happy to share it and showcase this film and give it to that Southeastern premiere. I think that's super exciting, and I look forward to everything that's coming next to you both.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Cheers. And I think we can